how was your day today? 2022 was a long journey, and for me, I must say, a miraculous one. I can't believe how much you all have embraced and loved. Why is that so? Thank you so much, and I hope this first episode helps you realize something new to untangle the lingering worries in your heart. Now, let's begin. Why do parents read their child's diary? Why do parents burn their child's letters? Why do parents arbitrarily throw away all the comics and models their child loves? What's the point of these shameful hobbies? Stop worrying about studying. Your parents are bending over backward to earn money so you can get a proper education, and now you're falling in love, diving headfirst into these useless things. Surely, every child among us has, more or less, seen themselves in this story when parents interfere excessively and control our lives. Sneaking peeks at diaries, secretly reading phone messages, investigating search history, or email content are ways many parents choose to understand their children and guide them on the right path. We admit that all parents can make mistakes. They are human, too. Although there are many different approaches to raising and educating children, almost every parent only wishes to bring the best things to their child. However, behaviors that disrespect privacy, invade a child's personal life, coupled with cruel, openly contemptuous, and malicious words, sometimes even physical violence, leaving bruises on the child's skin, followed by the phrase, "Everything your parents do is for your own good." All these characteristics form the silhouette of toxic parents. Toxic parents are parents who, intentionally or unintentionally, use negative words and behaviors, both physical and emotional abuse, that hinder and distort a child's development. In the book, Filling the Empty, Healing Emotional Trauma in Childhood, by psychology master John S. Wells, 12 types of toxic parents are outlined. These are the causes of children experiencing emotional deficiencies in childhood. And within Asia's strict, tiger mom, culture, the following are likely the two most common types of parents in Vietnam. The first type is authoritarian parents. These are conservative, rule-focused parents who tend to forbid and punish. They demand that their children comply with the rules or limits they set, but spend very little time listening to their children's emotions and needs. No going out after 9 p.m., no sleeping over, no piercings, no looking at pictures, no playing with friend ABC just because their parents don't seem decent. These parents are always right. A child's opinion is often considered unimportant. Children only have one path, to be obedient because mom and dad said so. They must live by the commands and plans their parents have already laid out for them. They attend the school their parents choose, study the subjects their parents sign them up for, play with friends their parents approve of, and read books their parents want. They dare not voice their questions, thoughts, or feelings. They are taught to obey unconditionally. Any sign of dissatisfaction will result in punishment or serious consequences. Gradually, they become insecure, always doubting themselves, or not daring to do anything different from what their parents taught them. The second type of toxic parent is narcissistic parents. These are parents who are preoccupied with their image. They view their child as a tool to meet their own needs. They only care about themselves, and the child must not damage their reputation. When their daughter achieves high marks, narcissistic parents constantly brag or talk about their child's talents. However, when the child does not achieve the desired results, narcissistic parents often feel ashamed and uninterested in the child. Narcissists need to feel perfect, so they avoid responsibility when they make mistakes and blame their children. You disappoint your parents too much. Or, because of you, your parents can't hold their heads high in front of relatives. Narcissistic parents also demand that their children take care of them in the future. They often instill this idea from childhood until adulthood. A common saying is, "Your parents worked hard to raise you, so you owe your parents. You must take care of your parents later to repay that debt." Like a chemical poison, the emotional damage caused by parents spreads from a child's childhood into adulthood. Just as Dr. Lin Nguyen Phuong said in his book, Raising Children in Confusion, many parents think their children will quickly forget when they grow up. Yes, they do grow up, and they might forget some details of their nightly nightmares, but their lives are proof of the consequences of such a toxic environment. Sons who grow up may bully, threaten, and assault their wives. Daughters who grow up in resentment and criticism will use those same hurtful words to wound their own children. They will endure abusive husbands, thinking they are as foolish as their father once cursed their mother. The why question here is, why do parents behave in such toxic ways toward their children? The origin of this parenting style likely stems from the cultural foundations of Asian people and the behaviors they uphold. While Western culture values individualism, encouraging children to be independent from a young age, Eastern culture heavily leans toward collectivism, where the common value of the group is placed above individual interests. Asian culture is founded on Confucianism, a political and ethical doctrine that teaches us to respect hierarchy, uphold filial piety, value, saving face, and demands respect for elders and proper conduct according to one's status to create a harmonious and strong collective. Therefore, young people are not encouraged to disagree, point out mistakes of teachers, parents, or elders, as doing so would cause the person of higher status to lose face, and those children would be labeled as disrespectful and unfilial to adults. Furthermore, from an individual perspective, psychologists also affirm that most parents who abuse their children have psychological problems, such as severe stress, depression, anxiety disorders, or overwhelming life pressures that cause them to cope in distorted ways. They also carry psychological trauma. They may view their children as tools to exact revenge on their partners or society. They may have been victims of abuse themselves in the past, and now they continue to apply those same words and behaviors when raising their own children. Pain and trauma will continue to spread from one generation to the next. Many Vietnamese parents, to some extent, are those who had to live through cold, dry childhoods, lacking the most basic care. Wars, divisions, famine, backwardness, the tragic remnants of a chaotic society, have more or less made those children of the past resilient but lacking in empathy. And then they project these pains onto their own children later in life. So, can you forgive your parents? In Kakami Sashi's book, Living Joyfully Amid Stifling Times, there's a story that I'll always remember. I was an anime enthusiast, an otaku from elementary school. I loved the 2D world and felt happy watching anime, but my mother hated my hobby bitterly. She always said, "This hobby is so shameful, throw it all away." I vehemently argued back, "What does my pocket money and part-time job earnings have to do with you?" But in the end, my mother still arbitrarily threw away all my anime tapes and models. She said she did it so I would focus on my studies and have a future. I was so shocked and utterly enraged at the time. I didn't speak to my family for 3 months. I'm 53 now, but every time I recall the moment my mother arbitrarily denied and discarded my passion, a wave of anger still surges within me, and I feel a lump in my throat. Even though my parents are old now and I have to take care of them, I still can't shake off the resentment from that year. I want to forgive them, but I truly don't know how to let go of the old grievances. In response to that story, the author Kakami Sashi offered an answer that resonated deeply with me. Even though you're 53 years old, have you ever sat down with your mother and spoken to her directly, saying, "Mother, even now, whenever I remember that day, an overwhelming anger floods back to me"? Not to insult, not to argue, but simply to ask, carefully and calmly, "I still cannot forgive your actions and words back then. What was so shameful about a child's hobby?" Remember, no matter how agitated you feel, don't forget the initial goal. Not to blame, but to express all your feelings to build a new relationship. Because if your mother didn't care about your feelings back then, you need to acknowledge those feelings now. And so does your mother. Every child needs to learn to be angry about the things that happen around them. You need to acknowledge the pain of not receiving the parental love you longed for. You need to stop minimizing or forgetting the harm your parents caused you. Because often, forgiving and forgetting means pretending it never happened. So, you don't have to forgive if you don't want to. You can still forgive toxic parents, but you should do it at the very end, meaning when the issues on both sides have been resolved, and it's time to clean up the remnants of the story. The stories of privacy invasion and restricted freedom mentioned above are perhaps nothing compared to other cases of physical and emotional abuse inflicted by toxic parents. An alcoholic father who terrorized and beat his innocent child, turning their childhood into a living hell. A dark house where a mother constantly cursed and berated her child. "As long as you're in my house, eating the rice I buy, living off the money I provide, you will obey me." When everything around you is terrible, you'll eventually have to leave your current position. There's only one way: protect yourself from these poisons. Work hard, study hard to achieve financial independence so you are no longer dependent on your parents. It's difficult to change the ingrained nature and biased behavior of toxic parents. If you've tried everything, tried talking to them to make them understand, but there's no result, then the only way is to establish personal boundaries with them. However, every issue should be viewed from two sides. The perspective above is that of a child. So now, let's try to put ourselves in the shoes of parents. I thought a lot when making this podcast episode, partly because I was afraid I didn't fully understand the pain of children, and also because I'm not a mother yet, so I couldn't fully comprehend the thoughts of parents. If this podcast episode is listened to by parents, I only ask for one thing. I know the term, toxic parents, originates from the children's perspective, because no parent would accept being called that, even if they have certainly exhibited abusive behaviors toward their children. They would still rationalize that they did it because they only wanted what was best for their children. But parents, in any situation, invading your child's privacy and causing them negative emotions is still beyond what a child can endure. Children are grateful to their parents for bringing them into this world, but it would be truly wonderful if parents would allow them to live as themselves.